The next speaker has done something that is extraordinarily difficult. He has actually watched and grew more than 2,000 companies that came to life from little to nothing, and he has kept the score. What patterns does he see? What do breakout companies actually come from? And what does the data say about the next generation of founders? He's an internationally recognized expert, called by World Economic Forum a young global leader, by Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia. He is co-founder and chief business officer of Antler. Please allow me to welcome Fridtjof Berge.
Progress. We've come so far, so fast in our modern world, it almost seems automatic. But big and transformational change doesn't just happen. It all starts with people. People with passion who see a better way forward, who pursue ideas others don't see, who will keep going no matter what. Antler connects and invests in the most driven founders anywhere. People with their first big idea, or serial entrepreneurs building their next big thing. People looking for exceptional co-founders, or established teams looking to scale. People from any background, and from anywhere. Whoever they are, our global community of founders, experts, and investors helps them scale faster, and we keep backing them from day zero to greatness. Because progress doesn't just happen. It starts with the people who make it inevitable.
Thank you, and thanks for the great intro. It's my first time at the Adria Future Summit, and super excited to talk about what we've done with Antler, but perhaps more importantly, some of the learnings we can take from that as we're thinking about how to build tech economies, how to be competitive in the age of innovation, particularly around the AI revolution we're living in. So I'll talk a bit about how we've picked up a lot of learnings from investing in 2,000 companies around the world across 6 continents with Antler. So if we think about that, before we go to the learnings, we need to think about what's Antler been up to over the last 7-8 years, and what are our investment models, and then what are some of the learnings we take from the work we've been doing in vastly different markets. We are a venture capital firm that is hyperactive at the very inception stage of company creation and investing. And we also follow on into the later stages, managing around $1.3 billion across early stage funds around the world, growing that very fast since 2018. And along that journey, we invested in 2,000 companies. And more importantly than that, we are in 30 offices around 6 continents, in both very established hubs and in emerging ecosystems that are trying to be a breeding ground for the future unicorns and tech leaders of tomorrow. Some of the companies that we've been fortunate enough to be part of backing along the way are companies such as Lovable out of Sweden, in Stockholm, arguably one of the, if not the fastest growing software company ever, getting to 400 million in revenue in 1 year. Aerolo, the first eSIM unicorn in the world. We've been backing Bahadir, the CEO there, from the very beginning out of our offices in Singapore. Now he's having 20 million customers across 20 or 200 countries. Or Pixverse, who's one of the leading AI video generation companies in the world, who recently raised close to $400 million in their Series C. So tons of really, really exciting market leader unicorns, in some cases decacorn companies coming out along this journey, and that's been so encouraging to witness. We are, as I mentioned, in very established ecosystems, such as San Francisco, New York, London, Stockholm, Singapore. but also in emerging ecosystems like Sao Paulo, Nairobi, Ho Chi Minh City, and so forth. And this has been a very deliberate choice from the beginning. It's because the barriers to entry, the barriers to start a company, they're consistently going down. You have more access to education. You can learn almost anything online now if you're really structured and disciplined. You have more access to capital. Around half of the world's venture capital is now outside of the US, very different from 10, 20 years ago. But also the tech costs of getting started. Initially in the 90s, when the phenomenon of startups became more popular, it took several $100,000s to just get an online business off the ground because of the server costs. And then you have the cloud revolution, taking that down to tens of thousands, or in some cases, just thousands of dollars. Then you have the SaaS revolution with software as a service, further taking down the cost of getting a product to market. And of course, now, the last couple of years, AI has taken that to a whole different level. So you can do more with less, which means you can start and build and scale companies from anywhere in the world. This is something we saw was starting to happen in 2017, 2018, where we were starting out in Singapore. And I think it's more true now than ever before. There's three things we do at Antler that are really important. One is giving access to capital. I just shared that you can do more with less, but that doesn't mean that capital is not important. You still need capital to grow, build a moat, competitive advantage for your company, and to be able to scale very, very quickly to dominate the market. So capital is important, not just at the early stage, but throughout the company journey. The second thing is we've been focused on building a strong founder community, both locally and globally. So by being physically present in markets, you're creating a strong community around the founders. They can meet other co-founders. They can get early customers from startups who are typically quite open to trying new products and services. And of course, perhaps most importantly, you can get some honest, unfiltered advice from other startups. The third thing is advice and expertise, which is typically quite hard to come across in different markets, especially if you are early stage. We're trying to do the same there, both build a strong local group of advisors and experts, but more importantly, trying to connect them globally. So if you are building, let's say, a shipping company out of Singapore, but the best expert sits in our office or close to our office in Oslo, then we're making that connection happen. So being very focused on the inception or early stages of startups, but putting that under a global umbrella has been very rewarding so far. In order to do this level of investments, we need a very structured investment approach. And that's what we're doing essentially across 4 stages of Antler. We're sourcing great founders, both going out proactively and finding them and encouraging them to build their next company, but also getting a lot of inbound because our brand is now becoming more known. Then we bring in the best companies for on-site due diligence, essentially having them work on their ideas in one of our offices around the world. We then write typically the first check into the company that they ever take in. So this is really kind of early pre-seed capital is the inception stage. And then we follow on next to more traditional venture capital in the later rounds as companies need more capital. Behind all of this, we have been very structured in how to use and track and learn from data. And this is very important because why would you expand globally so quickly if you're not trying to leverage that to learn faster and to learn more efficiently? And what's great about this is we track every investment decision, try to figure out what did we do right, what did we do wrong, so that if we're making an investment decision in London tomorrow, we can pick or pull on learnings from investments we made in Singapore or Australia or elsewhere before that. So leveraging the network and the economies of scale is hugely important to become professional in the early stage landscape. And it's a big competitive edge we have. Putting that all together, we're looking at roughly 160,000 applications every year. Bear in mind that that's across 30 markets, but it's still a very big number. We bring in roughly 2% of these people who are building roughly 1,500 companies or looking to build out of our on-site due diligence. And then we invest in around 400 new companies around the world through this model. And we are then even more selective later on. I think these numbers are quite important to keep attached to the global map because it shows that you can do a very big entry funnel, but then be highly selective in how you deploy your capital. And of course, as the rounds go on into the later stages, the check sizes go up, but then of course conviction builds over time. What's great about this model is we are coming across so many different types of problems, hardware, software, different type of founders, by being so global and diversified. So you have, for example, AI into image recognition here at the top left with Salient. You have a lot of biotech innovation. You see a picture from Biogenes here in Malaysia. Desalination of water, a Norwegian company working on this across parts of the world with not enough clean water. And of course, Lovable, I mentioned this hyper-growth company in Sweden. You see an image here of their website where anyone here in this room, if you know nothing about coding, you can now use your mother tongue to write, and it will create a great website or app for you. So that's Antler. But let's look at some of the learnings we've been taking with us across this journey of opening in vastly different markets. The first one is that innovation is scaling faster and faster. And a great way to illustrate that is to look at what is the time frame it took for some of the groundbreaking innovation that we see in the world today to get to 50 million users. And if we think about this for a second, it's hard to estimate, but we see that cars and television, not sure if people have a number in their head, but it actually took 62 and 22 years to get to 50 million users. So long time frame. With cell phones and internet, still 12 years and 7 years respectively. This keeps going down with the social media age to a couple of years. And then my favorite innovation, Pokemon Go, we're down to 19 days. And of course, it's vastly different type of technologies and requirements for scaling these products, but it does illustrate the point that adoption rates, once you have strong product market fit, it keeps on accelerating. Another great view of this is how long it took to reach 1 million users for perhaps more recent innovation. We're up in 3.5 years with Netflix. We're down to less than a year with Facebook, Spotify, Instagram. And then with OpenAI, I'm sure everyone here has been using OpenAI's ChatGPT at least once. We're down to 5 days it took to get to 1 million users. So it's truly mind-boggling. And then for someone who spends the days and nights every week looking at AI companies, I think that this is just going to accelerate. This great chart here is looking at how long the large language models can perform quite advanced human tasks uninterrupted. And you're seeing that it goes from minutes a few years ago to a few hours ago, or a few hours just a few months ago, to now getting up to 14, 15 equivalent hours. I think if we're holding the same presentation in a few weeks with all the new models coming out, we're going to need a much bigger screen because this is growing not linearly, this is growing exponentially. What does that mean before we go to the next learning? I think it means that it's super important now to think about how can you be an attractive hub for developing a great founder-friendly startup ecosystem, because things are just moving faster and faster, and developing that infrastructure now and not 3-5 years from now, I think is very important. This links a bit to the second point, which is great founders come from anywhere. This was a belief we had in 2017, and I think it's definitely come true. We look at cities with 1 or more unicorns. It was just 37 back in 2013. It's more than 10x to 2024. Bit hard to see here, but you see all the small dots have 1 or more unicorn. You see they're starting to pop up all around the world, not just in the US or China or the UK, which was largely the case back in 2013. What does this mean? It means that the reduced barriers across education, across capital, across technology are continuing to open up more markets to become important hubs. Perhaps more importantly, having been to all of these markets that we have an Antler office in, and having worked on setting them up in vastly different ecosystems, I think now is really a great time to build a startup ecosystem that can be highly attractive to founders, both from the region and for people coming in. And there are a few things that I think are critical to have in such a setup. Coming back to capital access, this continues to be very important. And what a lot of ecosystems struggle with is that they might have some early stage capital, perhaps there's some incubation programs, some soft funding from governments or some angel investments, but there's not enough capital to carry companies forward as they scale. So thinking about where in the funnel you need to fill in the gaps is critical. Otherwise, founders will lose steam, the companies will not grow, or they will move out of the ecosystem, and then you lose this kind of virtuous cycle that we've seen, for example, in Stockholm. Second thing is on talent. So the great thing for many regions, especially in this one, is that there's a lot of great talent, especially technical talent. And having that is, of course, way easier than importing. Some markets have to be very good at importing talent. I think that's important for small hubs such as Singapore. But having a great founder base with strong technical skills is incredibly important. And I think there's a lot of ecosystems in the world, including this one, that have that. But they need to have a founder-friendly environment. And what goes into a founder-friendly environment from what we've seen around the world? I think market access is important. So finding ways for customers to get through the door, whether it's with government customers or with private corporations. Ways to do this to reduce the risk on both sides can be to have different type of sandbox environments where you're making it easier for corporations to test products from startups, perhaps providing some incentives to do so. But this is incredibly important to get market access, to get your product out there and start having paying customers. On infrastructure, it's also important with both the digital one, I guess digital sandboxes could fall within that category, but also physical ones. So building a startup physical hub around universities where there's great tech talent, or perhaps around co-working spaces where there's a lot of startups gathered, is incredibly important. Because although you can build a lot remotely, sitting next to other founders, we find that time and time again in Antler, is incredibly powerful in building new ideas, creating a bit of competitive dynamics, and learning from each other, building with each other. It's incredibly important to have that strong founder ecosystem. And I think, of course, on the regulatory part, trying to remove barriers, not create new ones for startups. I see a lot of good moves there globally, making it easy to bring in talent, making it easy to defer some costs into the future if you're a very small company. But I also see a lot of the other way around, where some ecosystems don't fully understand the challenges of a startup, taxing startup founders in a very difficult way, almost forcing them out. So I think looking at the regulatory space around the founder ecosystem is important, and listening to the voices of the founders on the ground so that we remove barriers and don't build more barriers. I think those are the main kind of learnings taken away from having worked on this for now 8 years. It's still early days. Hope to back many more companies all around the world in different markets, but also looking forward to talking to people here, continuing the conversation, and seeing how we can be helpful in taking some of our learnings to this region. Thank you.